Hello, everyone. Jess Stainbrook here with InVisible Disabilities Association, and we are here for the InVisible InCourage program. And I'm so honored and blessed today to have Bianca Lopes with me. Hello, Bianca. How are you doing?
I'm great, Jess. I'm honored and grateful as well.
Yes, and she did reveal to me that she's in an area where it's dark for 6 months at a time. So, we want to lift her up, give her a little bit of light in the conversation here. Bianca, what I know a little bit about you, and again, we've talked briefly about some of your passions and business background, but I really want you to describe kind of, how you grew up a little bit, where it led you to, and why you are who you are today, as far as how people see you as a business leader. And then we'll get into some deeper discussions about passion. How's that?
Sounds good. So I'm from Brazil originally. I was raised in Rio by my parents, who are both doctors, who I would say have dealt with their fair share of visible and invisible disabilities through their growing up. I grew up with a grandmother who is probably my greatest hero, who has polio. And when I was one of the first women, an interesting thing that she told me that I'll never forget is that she wore pants because she had scars and she had to wear equipment under her like legs and stuff. And back in the day, she wore pants, and then she divorced my grandfather because he was cheating and kicked him out of the house. So she's like, I wear pants, I'm divorced, and I'm a mother of four. So that's how I grew up, with a family of lots of people, lots of love, lots of different levels of visible and invisible disabilities. So it was kind of always there for me. I wanted to be an actress when I was a child. And I think it was like because I had some sort of need for attention, maybe. But one thing I used to say as a child, getting quite personal here, but one thing I used to say as a child is it used to come from my lungs, that my purpose came from my lungs. It came from the air that I breathe. So as I kind of went through life, I look at it as I've made a lot of intentional choices that led me to who people will Google on LinkedIn and see who they are, who I am perceived today. I started at a very young age wanting to go pursue education abroad because I knew my path. I had bought into the American dream, and I wanted to go study abroad. So at the bold age of 17, I picked up my things and I left and went to Canada. My English was pretty piss poor at the time. I spoke really great French, and I moved to Vancouver to go to school, and spent the past then 12 years in Canada. Started as wanting to be a diplomat. So I took this idea that an actress could travel and meet people to I'm going to be a diplomat and change the world and fight world hunger and get the people off the streets in Brazil that it was really common for me to see as a child growing up, but I have never become accustomed to it. Which kind of talks a little bit about purpose there too.
Yeah,
I went for that. Sorry?
From a personality standpoint, I don't think you should ever be comfortable with, homelessness and things like that. No, so I
agree.
hear you.
I agree. I think that the suffering of anybody else as a humankind should be our bar to have we become so numb that we're living life not awake. And I think my process has been of me slowly waking up to find this authentic, true self. Like today, I'm a professional in identity and data. Today, I'm a co-founder of a company called Tail. The company tells stories, and it has a pause symbol. And I actually started the company 2 years ago. And one of our clients, which is HSBC, said to me, they're like, "Did you quite literally mean it?" I was like, "Yeah, I might have been manifesting so hard that it put the whole world in pause." And it's interesting because our manifesto and what we wrote is that I had spent the past 10 years before starting Tail 2 years ago working in the financial services industry. So working between technologists, legislators, like regulators, and the bank. I had been a banker for years, and then I had run as the CIO of a biometric company, which is where I found identity, the definition of identity on a technical front. And I realized that people had no idea what any of it meant. All of us spoke this beautiful gibberish, And it was almost this from this place of fundamental fear. And hey, I believe fear is a good thing. It teaches you things. It's trying to tell you something, but it shouldn't define you. And it defines the industry because we've never advanced. So when I started TAIL, I started with the purpose of saying financial services did a pretty crap job at explaining to people money. I think as a society, we've at a deep core level failed at explaining to people how the unit of value was to be dictating their lives, and including them or excluding them. And I look at technology as this new unit of value or potential for breaking barriers that, if not explained, if not understood at a deep, non-complicated human level, it won't serve its full purpose. It's almost like somebody who spends their whole life in fear and not understanding and doesn't live to their true potential. I genuinely think that. So my entire company brings what I say the two sides of the ring. We have half creative team and a half technical team. So we take the technical stuff that's really hard, like data, identity, cryptography, and we explain in a very creative, human, empathetic, real way. And that's how most people will have seen me, through the videos and through the content that we create with that purpose in mind of how do I reconnect people back to this thing called technology and not scare them, which I think a lot of things do today.
Thanks for sharing all of that. And what I love about it is, again, having where I was drawn to speak and meet with you really was, a few weeks ago, you had kind of put out this passionate, I'm going to call it we can't settle for the new normal talk.
I hate the new normal. There's nothing normal.
You're exactly right. There's nothing normal about this.
There's nothing normal. We need to just stop calling it normal. And if it is normal, can we just not do that again? That wasn't okay. That didn't land us in a way. I'm glad you watched the video.
Yeah. So that was a very powerful statement that, again, drew me to getting together with you to say there's so much passion, and I love the way that what you've done is you've really taken your passion and connected it to this experience and life force, if you will, that has driven you through all of these big business things. I mean, banks and the biometrics, and I mean, literally crucial, critical things that will impact our culture completely. And yet there's this other side that you're seeing that's the most important side of the human interaction on that. Yeah. And so, I mean, why? And I mean, your conversation about we need financial literacy. Oh my gosh, yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Oh my gosh, we still do it wrong. Yep.
Yeah. And again, my question to you is, how can I help? I mean, I don't know if you know my other background is, if you look, and here's you talked about the Google search thing. I try not to Google search. I really don't. I want to meet in person, and I want to do this. As a matter of fact, if I get on the phone with somebody, the first thing I will say is, please, let's not Google each other. Let's just have coffee and hang out and do it the old-fashioned way, right? Because I enjoy this. But sometimes you can't help yourself of, oh my gosh, and this whole thing pours out. Well, a lot of people know me for my movies, my media. I mean, I have 8 Emmy Awards, blah, 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 blah. It's not why I don't brag about
blah,
that.
Blah, 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 blah. I love it. You call it blah, blah, blah. I call it soup letter. It's great.
Soup letters. That's very funny.
It's like a bunch of accolades. It's like, drop the accolades. Like, who are you as a human being?
Yes, exactly.
Collected those things, but who are you?
Well, and I really see it as those are bonus items that help me open doors to go have the conversations I want to have. And so that's kind of how I look at you, is that what great experience that you have leveraged into TAIL to be able to create and craft stories in such a way that change people's lives. And so that's where I want to go kind of now is why and how do we get through this thing, given the differences that sometimes we think are important. And really, I mean, Talk to me about that from your standpoint.
How we get through life or how we get through making that change? Is that the question?
A little of both. Yeah. I mean,
Um,
it's going to come from your personal side of why it's so important to you now. And then, yes, how do we get to that place from what you've seen in the industry and interacting? I mean, you have a global citizenship to you that many people don't have. I mean, some people, if I lived in Philly, I lived in Philly for a long time, and
yeah.
it took me a while to break out of there, right? So, but you have this different thing. So, from that experience, yes, how do we look at things differently to allow ourselves to understand and change in a good way?
Here's my hope. And here's how I have been trying to govern the relationships and the things I invest in. So I'm vibing in the same sort of frequency as the people that believe in that. Because I think that that's powerful. That's almost like reaction, right? That has an ignition capacity. As you mentioned, I've been super privileged to have worked and have lived in completely different cultures, countries, and seen the deep embedded values of some of those countries, the deep embedded legislation that surrounds a particular country that maybe sometimes people don't realize that it maybe is why things are the way they are, or maybe it's a part of why things are the way they are. I think the first thing I hope is that pausing during this pandemic has made us realize how connected we truly are. Not in the here's the fintech or the technology trend number 102, Uber connectivity, blah. Like that's not what I mean. I'm not talking about that and all the APIs and all that. I'm talking about the fact that if you make a bad move or if you infect somebody, what is the chain reaction of that? I think we've been reminded at a human level what is the impact of our lives. And what I hope for is that that has ignited a fire that has long been awake but sort of dead and dormant inside of all of us, of being able to see things for what they are. You're in the States, obviously we've seen how polarized our country is from so many perspectives, but we've also seen people finally see other people and have conversations like Black Lives Matters, or because we're finally saying, hey, we haven't seen this, we haven't heard it enough, and we need to hear it, because that human, whether they're a Black person, a disabled person, or whomever person, however you identify, I think is at the core of where we need to be to make any change. And I see that in the financial services sector, which is kind of a mini representation of an ecosystem, right? If you look at a big bank, they have their silos, they're divided. They have their own kingdoms and their own interests, and they often don't speak to each other or communicate properly. And that's why that's why the death of them is imminent. That's why things like fintech are coming about, because it's just proving that people right next to you, when they communicate, when they see each other, when they have a diverse perspective to create a product, they get further. It's not to say that the people in the bank are not capable of it, but if they don't realize that they're a unit, a functioning organism, not the sum of its parts, which I think is that, and I think it's just like, it's so almost religious and basic, and you call it from any religion, you would read this about sort of people being able to see the other person and see the other human there is there. I think that's at the core of what I do and what I believe in, and it pours into what I do by the fact that I don't genuinely think when you put your hand in a pillow, whether you're the CEO of Swift, that you care and remember what API or standard description was given to you. You remember the people that touched you along the way, the stories you've heard. And that's my contribution to this unity and to this being seen, being heard, being appreciated. And I think it's just like we've messed that up pretty bad. Mm-hmm. We've messed that up pretty bad in society. And the influencer crap is just even worse. Like, it's just, we've messed it up pretty bad.
Well, and it's interesting. I mean, that's a great segue to the conversation of invisible disabilities, because yes, so many people don't have a voice, or when they try to have a voice, they're not heard, they're not believed. That's a big thing that we deal with all the time. And so until somebody actually believes that you're dealing with something that you can't see, and it is very detrimental and difficult to get through for whatever reason, chronic pain or chronic illness or whatever it is, how do we engage in the networks that don't accept those kinds of things? How do we break through that? I mean, you and I have talked about, and I'll ask you too, straight up, from an identity standpoint. You as an identity expert, you've seen the IDs and the cards that we do that are worldwide, and start this conversation of how can I help? If it's just given a seat on a bus, or in a I know my neighbor has something and they're older, and I'm going to go into the grocery store. How, what can I pick up for you, kind of a thing. How do you see that? How do we engage that? I mean, I'm going to take your analogies of, we need to pause, but what's next? How do you open that next door of what's happening, and why is this so important?
I think is important, for which I can't see a future without us solving that. I see a very ugly future. I see a very filled with hate and barrier, and is so less rich than it could be. And I think that's what bothers me. It's like almost like it's like if only we could just coexist like a forest ecosystem does. Like, look how gorgeous it is. Like, look how diverse it is. Look how there's enough for everybody. So that's why I think it's important. How? I don't know. I think like things like this, honestly, I think they might seem, sometimes to business people often seem small. And to me, is the change in every person that gets touched by something we said today. Something that ignites in that person is going to be the catalyst for that change. As an identity expert, I think your card is a great step in the right direction. I think there is a lot of, what I would urge is that the fashion industry gets involved. What I would urge is that the cryptography industry gets involved and says, how can I put this sort of verifiable credential or self-attributed credential of my invisible disability on a payment transaction, or on a whatever sort of certification and authentication, which is the identity space I live in, is how can you prove you are you online? How can you prove you have an invisible disability? Who gets to say who that invisible disability is? The reason why I said the fashion industry is because I would think about, I don't want to wear a card because I don't like wearing any cards. So, but I'm probably not the only one. And how can the fashion industry and people that are creative and given a gift donate that gift to something that clearly needs it? I think that's the start of that change. I think what you're doing is the start of that. And then I think what we're going to have to work on is empowering people to own their narrative. And breaking those barriers of how those narratives are perceived. We won't be able to control people's reaction. We won't be able to control our own, unfortunately. But I think a lot of us don't share that openly. We don't share whatever invisible disability we have because we're afraid. We're afraid of being seen and what that could mean. I think we're afraid of the repercussions on our work or on our worth. And we all seem to forget that we were born worthy, that we are so worthy of, we have the birthright to anything, to everything, as long as we're not harming another person. And I think these labels have come with a price. And I often question if the role of identity is to label everything. And how far do you label?
Yeah.
Who has the right to label?
Well, and that's a scary conversation that we have in dealing with talking about IDs, especially at the legislative level or something like that. I mean, frankly, And I ask these questions specifically of you because I think there's a generational difference. Like, I want to know your opinion. You want to know why? Because I think differently. I grew up in a different time.
Okay.
It's the same thing. I remember my grandfather was in World War II as a merchant marine, and he never talked about it. Nobody ever heard any stories. And yet, when he and I would hang out, for some reason, I
He
could
would
get
tell
him
you.
to tell me the stories. Yeah, yeah. I was the
My
guy. I was
grandma's
the
the same with me. She tells me the stories. I love it.
well,
I'm so privileged.
and it's probably why both of us have recognized the value of stories and how that generational passing on can change. I mean, I look back to I'll call it biblical history just
Yeah.
because I don't know a different word for it, but the Jewish oral tradition of passing down those stories, and even their, they said the Israelites used to pile rocks as a remembrance of the stories that happened of how God was faithful to whatever happened, whatever the story was. But the point is to say those stories are important, and right now, I mean, I representing the gap in the generations. I really want. I mean, one, I appreciate. Thank you for joining me today. This is so awesome and fun. But I love to hear your opinion and your viewpoint, because again, sometimes, gosh, I didn't even know that was a thing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I need to learn it. And so,
And I think
yeah.
that exactly that it you just said. You just had the willingness to open, to learn, to listen. I think that's what we're missing in society at large. Like,
Well, and many of us aren't. I mean, I think you and I have probably a unique gift in we're so driven by stories and understand. I mean, some of my career was actually translating things that were very complicated into an educational or informational video so regular people could understand it. I mean, I can't, your financial things are a great example of why is there so uh
there's the word.
no, well, boring is one, right? And so making it fun and humorous and all that stuff, but to make a point really can change the game here. Um, but yeah, no, I think that willingness to walk into a room and have the conversation. Did you ever see the I love the Heineken did the Worlds Apart video. Did you ever see that?
No, I
Oh my
haven't.
gosh, it's
You have
incredible.
to share when you share the interview the link.
Yes, I will share with you and send you this link, but it's actually phenomenal and so well done, because what they do is they do these interviews with people, and the people talk about their biases and what they believe in and what they don't believe in. And then they purposely put the two people into a room and have them solve a problem, right?
That's cool.
And at the end, they show the videos of the people talking about all of their biased their judgments against people, and it happens to be that they picked a person that has that exact thing that they're talking against, and then they offer them a beer to say, would you like to stay and keep talking, or would you like to leave? Oh my gosh. It's just, well, and it's funny because there's one guy. I mean, the English have such a great sense of humor. He gets up and pretends to walk away, and then he comes back, oh, just kidding, you know. But for a moment, there's this, your heart drops, as in, oh my gosh, please don't leave the conversation. Like,
Yeah.
we need this. We'll never understand it without it. You know what I'm saying? So um, let me go back to identity a little bit, because I hear you on the digital side of this, and how do we create it? I agree completely. I don't want to wear a tag, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to be. I mean, I don't want to be labeled. And frankly, there's a high percentage of people in the disability space that are nervous about that, straight up because of what Hitler did to the Jews and to the disabled. If you'll remember, the disabled in World War II were the ones that he pulled out first to do all of the scientific testing on. And so there's a huge
Fear.
fear factor of, why would I ever identify to put myself in that position? And so that's a big thing of how do we overcome that? How do we get to a place that we can put ourselves aside enough to care about humanity in such a way that we can make a difference?
I heavy-hearted answer that I don't know how we do that. I have a few ideas. I think obviously cryptography has advanced so much in the sense that you should be able to have control over who you choose to trust with that information and how that
And you know what,
information is disclosed.
Bianca,
Yeah.
define cryptography, because I know
Yeah,
there'll
yeah,
be.
yeah. So cryptography is like a secret thing. So it's like it's like hiding a message in something that only the receiver has the special code to unlock. So it's like if I were to digitize the card and take the card and say my invisible identity is this thing, this little secret message that only the institutions, the professionals with, like, if you think about identity in a broader scape, you get to a place in which only doctors will have a certain type of credential. They already do, right? They have a doctor sort of license to practice. If this is in a digital world, maybe that's the only person who the key unlocks your information. Because then this allows us to protect where warranted or where trust is yet to be earned, which is, I think, a lot of the problem with the pure labeling when it's in the open space, because then you're vulnerable to horrible things like what could be horrible, and the leaking. And the United States particularly horrible because of, like, you have only 6 countries that have privacy laws. You don't have a national identity scheme. You have the real ID compliant documentation, but you don't have data ownership, right? Legislation that is advanced enough. So there's a lot of sort of foundational pieces that the legislator needs to address and attend to, that you need to sit on the table to say, this is a use case, right? Just like in New Zealand, their native population is a use case. They identify themselves with their ancestors in multiple families. Okay, how does technology take this human thing that has existed way before technology was around and put it into this digital or digitized system in which us are going to live in and work with? And I think that's where the gap really is that it's on people understanding that these things need to be thought about it from a very inclusive perspective, and not inclusive because it's let's do a kumbaya, hold hands, and post a photo of the colors of Benetton, like commercial. So you show every color. We have every color in every race. Look, we even have a person with a turban. Like, that's what I've heard people say when they say diversity. And I'm just like, it's so much more than that. Like, an identity infrastructure has to be sophisticated enough, and I think it is, but it has to be thought through from a multiple layer perspective, aka you are Jess, you're also an Emmy Award winner, you are this show host, you are a friend, you are a business owner, you own a car, you might have invisible disabilities. There's lots of things that are identifiables for you that not necessarily all need to be open to the entire public, and not all necessarily need to be closed either. So we need a system in which, in a digital world, this is possible, especially now more than ever. Like, if people weren't sick, society was already sick in so many levels before the pandemic. The employers that sit around thinking that, oh yeah, we do coffees on Zoom now. I'm like, okay, that's great. What else do you do to take care of your people? Because there might be a glooming issue of a lot of disabilities that we've been too busy to pause to realize we even had ourselves. And how does society come out of that? By owning that narrative and saying, I own this, and this is who I need to, from a societal perspective, share that with, because I might be able to help. Like, there's a lot of really cool data around, as an example, societies that have historically identified their populations correctly have actually been able to say, because maybe, as an example, COVID attacks the Latino population a lot more. Well, they've been exposed to brutal kind of work. They're on the front. Like, there's reasons. It's not because they don't follow the rules or they hug each other and live over there. And like, there's lots of reasons, but that's what data tells you. It tells you the stories of these people. But if it's not stored properly in this new world, if we're not storing the nuances of who you are in a world where it can really make a change, this information will never benefit the society at large like it should. And it's kind of a weird dichotomy in terms of like, we share so much online, we post everything online, we create data all the time, we're trusting it on the hands of some technology firms that have very little to no regulation. And then the really important stuff that we should have a way of identifying, like you made a card, because there's a gap. There's a gap in the market on identifying people and giving them what's maybe rightfully theirs, in the sense of, we should accommodate, we should care, because you are a contributing member of society. And this one thing that makes you you doesn't make you less. And how does a digital system intake that? That's a really big problem. And that's why I'm passionate about identity. When people ask me why, it started in biometrics. It started as a tool to capture who somebody really is. And it ended as, wait a minute, this is something we've been anciently doing. And now we need to rethink it, because clearly we've done it really wrong, because look where we are now. Like, I was having a conversation, Jess, 25 billion pounds were lost in the UK from poorly identifying people just during COVID alone. So this means money that should have gone to people and businesses was lost because other people and criminals could identify. That's a societal damage that's pretty big. So it's not a matter of does this matter? It's a matter of, what are we going to do about it? Yeah. Right? Like, this is the life of people that we're throwing out the window.
Wow. Well, and so on our next show, Bianca will come back and have all of the answers for this.
I know, I don't have all the answers. I'm super passionate about it. You open the Pandora box of, like, not Pandora box because it's like lovely what comes out of it, but the passion box.
No, and I think that's important. I mean, we're asking valid questions that do move us forward, but it's not easy stuff.
Nope.
It's what it boils down to. And I really do.
Life isn't easy, and that's okay.
Yeah, right. Say that again out loud, please.
Life isn't easy, and that's okay.
Okay. I have 3 daughters in college. I need them to hear that and embrace that.
It's not, and like, they need to push through it. Like, you have to.
Yeah. Well, and it's part of everything that I think we're kind of doing. So, any last kind of words of wisdom?
I don't know. Is there something you want to ask me that I haven't answered on my ramblings?
I think your ramblings.
What happens when I'm not scripted and there's no questions?
That's right, exactly, and that's the fun part for me, is to just let it go. I think there's probably a part 2 to this, and so I'm going to let all the questions. Yeah, I'm going to let all the questions sit out there on purpose, because I think we need to start driving a conversation. You said it straight up, is we need to be at the table, and we are at the table in some places, but it's a difficult spot to be and to get to, because there is, I mean, especially at the legislative level, there's so much red tape and stuff that
I love that.
I mean,
it's probably how they feel as well, by the way.
I would agree. And so again, how do we change that? What does that look like? And the answer right now is we don't exactly know, but we have to keep trying. We can't give up. And so I think, yeah. So one, thank you for your expertise, your sharing your wisdom, and continuing to press into all of these things and to challenge us, with your regular communication of how you're feeling about some of this stuff. Because again, I think you represent a voice that's important for us to hear and recognize, hey, we need to pay attention. And we all want to get there, but if we're not trying, it's not going to happen, right? So in answer to your question, I don't think I have any other questions, except again, you can do your kind of passionate 2-minute close on whatever you feel you want to leave people with from this conversation.
Oh my God, what do I want to leave people with? I don't want to leave people. I want to meet them. I
I
want to
know, right?
start a conversation.
Well, that you know what, that's a conversation itself. Is You're right. We do want to start the
Yeah,
conversation.
I want people to ask me, what do they want to talk about? How, like, leave your comments. My rant to you is leave your comments. Tell us, and it's not leave your comments because some algorithm is going to make me feel better about myself. Is that leave your comments so we spend our energy and time doing something that's valuable to you. I think that's the passion is here, and you can see it, you can feel it, you can hear it. And like live awake as you're going through life. And like that's what I want to do. I want to light people up and light myself up in the process. I think that's the most exciting part.
This is the Bianca that I love to listen to in these little blurbs. I am going to ask the question, how can people get in touch with you?
On LinkedIn, how you and I got in touch. I
Okay.
think that's probably the easiest way. Or you can send me an email. It's bianca@tail.co.
Okay,
So that's
cool.
my email. You can get me directly.
I'll include that
Not
as
a
a
bot.
graphic. Yeah, for sure. Well, Bianca, thank you so much for joining us
Thanks
on
so
this
much,
show.
Jess. Thank you for taking this step and involving me in it, and for
thank
sharing
you.
part of your life. I really appreciate it.